Hi everybody. I'm recording this instead of doing a live, but I plan on trying to do, let me take the glass off. I plan on trying to do a live soon. Okay, so what I plan on doing is paranormal vlogs and just talking about my experiences growing up paranormal with weird, strange things happening. And before I start, I want to introduce you to my little friend. He's going to hang out with us. What should we name him? He's my co-host. It's my husband won't sit with me. Do you want to sit with me? He shake the syndrome. So this is my co-host. um, maybe I should hold him. Okay, so this being my first paranormal vlog, I'm going to talk about how when I was really young growing up, first let me say it, I grew up in a big 5-floor house. It was built for my parents. My parents are from Italy. Like all people from Italy, they were living in Brooklyn. And then they went to Long Island. They built a 5-floor house. They had it really nice. And nobody lived there before. It was potato farms before they built. All right, now I'm going to start. So in the house, a lot of strange things happened, even outside of the house. And to this day, I still have things. So I will set it up for you. So in the beginning, it started with me, even as a baby, remembering things even before I was 1. And also, I'm going to stop. Okay, so this is my little co-host. So, okay, so to continue with the story, I don't know, you can't see my cauldron though, because the co-host is in the way. So, I grew up in a big 5-floor house that was built for my parents, and before that it was potato farms. I'm going to put this little guy. He's going to hang out here. So, with that, I remember when I was a baby, before I was even 1, I have lots of memories. I remember looking in the mirror thinking it was weird that I had these baby fingers, and I'd laugh because it looked ridiculous, and I was wearing diapers, and I was like, what's this? You know, I just thought it was funny. But I felt like I was an adult consciousness in a baby's body, if that makes sense. It just was weird. And like I would have thoughts just like an adult would, not like a baby. And I have lots of memories before I was even 1. And I remember when my mother was alive and I'd tell her, she'd be like, how would you know that? I remember when I was born in the hospital, and all the ladies pinching my cheeks and calling me apple cheeks, which they did because I guess I had big fat chubby cheeks. So and I remember that when my mother had me and all that. So I don't know, unaware consciousness, I suppose, or my third eye was already open and it never closed. So then I remember there was this entity I used to call an angel that when I was born with me. And I used to have this ceramic angel above my bed that you wind up, I guess it played lullaby. I had it till a certain age. And then I remember I used to talk to that, and that's where that entity would be hanging out, I suppose. And I would talk to it. It would talk to me, but not, in your mind. Telepathy. I'm not crazy. So I would, one time she told me that it was time for her to leave me, and I didn't want her to, but she said, and you won't remember me, but I was upset and cried. I wanted to remember her. So she said, all right, I can do that. I have permission to let you remember me, but not everything. So I don't remember everything, all my conversations with her. And I just remember that it was time for her to go. And subsequently, that at that time, my mother gave that little angel to the lady that used to live diagonal. because she was pregnant, and or she already had a baby. She already had the baby, and she wanted her to have the angel because now I was getting older and she didn't think I needed that anymore. I was kind of upset because I really loved that and it would have been nice to keep it, but what are you going to do? So it kind of went hand in hand with giving away that angel and her, that entity taking off and saying, I have to leave you now, you're old enough. So, but I was still young. I still might have been, I don't know, 8 years old, something like that. Maybe 7. So, all right, so the real weirdness started when I was, oh, well, all my life, like I said. I used to see things like, even as a baby, I used to sit on my parents' bed waiting for them to get ready at night. And like the edges of the ceiling where the ceiling and the wall meet would spin around, and I'd watch it, and it was funny, and I would laugh, and my mother was always like, what are you looking at? But the entities were entertaining me, making me laugh. Just because I was bored sitting there, and they would make me laugh. So I always thought that was funny, and I couldn't talk. I was a baby, so how am I couldn't put into words. When I got a little older, I told my mother what it was. The ceiling's moving, because I was still young, couldn't really have a full conversation, but I had words now, so I was able to tell her about that. So I'm going to put him down for a little bit. He's still here. See his head? So you can see my bubbling cauldron. So after that, other things would happen, such as voices. No, I'm not schizophrenic. I'm not crazy. But I still hear those voices. What it is that I used to hear voices come from either way upstairs on the 5th floor or way downstairs in the basement. And they used to call my name without saying my real name. They would just say my name, and like magical. Not that that's not my real name, but it's my screen name. I just don't want to say it. And they would, like, in a sing-song way, call my name. And sometimes they would just use a non-gender voice. You couldn't tell whether it was male or female, and they would just call me. And other times, which was kind of creepy, is that they used to use family, basically mimicking family members' voices. For instance, if I was in my room playing with dolls, Barbie dolls, whatever, I would hear, like, my father calling me from the basement. And usually it was there because we had a lot of cats. My father took care of a lot of cats. And he'd be down there for a while, cleaning up, feeding, he had a lot to clean. And so that was down by the basement. And they had a window they can go in and out of the house with and stuff like that. So they weren't trapped in the basement, but they would make a mess. He'd have to clean all these litter boxes because he was taking care of like 30 of them. Until he could find homes for them. Of course, I wanted to keep them all, and so did my father, but my mother wasn't thrilled with that. So I would hear these voices sometimes mimicking, and sometimes it would be my father, and usually my father's voice would come from the basement when they were mimicking my father's voice. And my cat you want to see my cat? Hold on. Ooh, it's one of my cats. It's Rudy. He's a chubby guy. He was trying to get on my lap. This is Rudy, and he just ate, so I can't really hold him. Okay, Rudy, go. Salem is in the bedroom. He ate, and he's going to sleep. So I remember going, what? Because I was in my room playing with my Barbie dolls or whatever I was doing. I was always creating something. And, it's annoying when someone calls you and you say, what? And they don't answer you. So I'd get annoyed as a little kid. And I'd say anywhere between 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This would happen to me. Up until, I guess, maybe 10. And even 11. And I'd get annoyed because I would have to go see what they wanted. I'd go out in the hallway and say, what? And I guess I was on the 3rd floor. Or maybe the 4th. I was on the 4th floor. So all the way from the basement onto the fourth floor. And then I would go down there and I'd open the basement door and go, what? And it'd be dark. And nobody would be down there but my cats. And I'm like, and then I'd, go to my mother and be like, where's Daddy? I heard him calling me. And my mother would be like, he's at work. He's still at work. My father used to go work in the city, um, Manhattan, and he'd take the train. And so we'd have to wait for him. And this was early in the afternoon. All these things didn't just happen at night, at midnight when you're sleeping in bed and at the witching hour. This stuff happened in broad daylight with the sun beaming, and it didn't matter what the weather was. Could be a thunderstorm, could be a beautiful day, could be winter, summer, spring, fall. Didn't matter. Didn't matter the time of the day or the weather. It happened. And so I would be wondering, well, that's impossible because I heard him calling me. And my mother would be like, he's at work. There's nobody else here but me and you. My sisters would be out. My husband's laughing at me, pointing at something. What is it? Hold on, I'm going to stop this. So my mother would say that nobody was home, just her and I, and we were the only ones there. So it'd be impossible. And my father didn't get home usually from the train station between 6 and 6:30, and that's when we ate, back in the day when everybody ate as a family together at the table, which I rarely do myself. I eat on the couch watching TV, or I'm on my computer. So that used to happen, as well as sometimes it would mimic my mother. Now, my mother had a really thick Italian accent, so who else had that, especially back in the day? And she had a really thick accent, and I would hear her, and she had a certain way she said my name, and they did it perfectly. And then I'd be looking for her, and she'd be outside. And that would come from anywhere. It would usually come from upstairs, because that's where my mother's sewing room was, up on the 5th floor. It's like they knew which floor my father was usually on. Like, my father was usually down in the basement cleaning for the cats and feeding the cats and the dog and whatnot, or he'd be on the 2nd floor doing his work paperwork or sitting on his recliner. And my mother would be usually on the 5th floor in her sewing room doing because she was a seamstress. She made clothes. She sewed a lot. So she had a sewing room. So they did that a lot, and they knew the location, and I'd be fooled, and I'd go up there, and the sewing room was empty, and not as scary as going in the basement when it's dark. I mean, there was plenty of light. We had big sliding glass doors, and there was a sun deck, so onto the roof, so there was light, and there was nobody in the room. The room was empty, so there was an adjacent room that was huge. It was like the whole part of the upper house, and nobody was in there. So I'm like, well, where in the world is this coming from? And then the creepy thing is, while I'm standing there, I'd hear the voice coming from the room that I'm standing in, but there's nobody there. So I'm thinking my mother's just playing. At this point, I haven't put 2 and 2 together. My cat's acting like a nut. They're always acting like a fool when I'm making videos, so I don't know what he's doing. I think he wants to play. So at this point, I'm not sure basically what's going on. I wasn't really put 2 together that this is something. I just thought I was getting pranked. Okay? And what? So, I didn't get too much into it until it started happening a lot more. But at this point I was, not knowing. But while I'm standing in that room, someone's calling me, and I'm like, okay, this is really weird. So eventually I find out my mother was outside, because typically, I was a little kid, I spent all my time with my mother. So I was with my mother. My father would be working. That's the way it was in the old days. The man worked, the woman stayed home. So, but my mother did have a little job. She was a seamstress. She worked at a place, and then eventually she just worked from home, doing people's alterations, tailored, making clothes for them, whatever. she'd be outside and I'd find her and I'd tell her. She's like, no, I wasn't upstairs. I was hanging laundry because she liked to hang laundry outside. I didn't like it because then, you go put your clothes on, to be a bee in there. Bugs. She liked the smell of laundry. My father liked it because it saved on the electricity bill. But in the warmer months, of course not in the winter, but she used to be hanging stuff out there, and I'm like, "You sure you weren't upstairs?" She's like, "No, I was out here," and I'm like, "But I heard you." And so this would go on a lot. Sometimes I would hear my sister's voices call me. Uh, if I was in my room, I'd hear it like somewhere out in the hallway because their room, see, whatever it was, the entities knew that their rooms were right there next to mine. Like my one sister had it up on the fifth floor in that big, huge room next to the sewing room. My floor was the fourth floor, where I liked the little bedroom. Then there was a medium size. Then my parents were on the other side, and there was a bathroom in the middle. Then you go down to the other floor. But the upper floor, the fifth floor, had a landing with a big walk-in closet, and right across was the sewing room, and then a big, huge room. So, I mean, there's a lot to this story if I can get to it. So I used to be scared a little bit because it was kind of freaking me out. I didn't understand it. But at this point, I there's somebody outside. I don't. But at this point, I still thought maybe somebody was pranking me, making a joke, because I was the youngest out of four sisters. Four of us, and they like to pick on me, make fun of me, and play games and jokes on me. So because I would get them. As a kid, I would hide there was a tall broom closet, and I would hide in there, and like my father or anybody, I'd go, bah! I love doing that, and I would do that all over the house, so they pretty much had enough of me doing that to them. They'd get really scared. I'd hide in their bedroom closets and just leap out, or wait for them to open it. If they didn't open it fast enough, then I'd just jump out and scare the living daylights out of them. So sometimes I thought they were just getting me back for that. But when that kind of happened, when I'm standing right in the room and it's calling me from that room, it was getting creepy. And they were getting pretty good at mimicking all the voices. And again, it's always when I was busy in my room playing, and I'd be like, what? What? Another thing that happened is that, like at night, when the house was still and quiet, you can hear. Now, where I grew up was in the suburbs, and back in the day, there wasn't a lot of people around. It wasn't a lot of traffic. At night, it was peaceful. It was very quiet. You can hear the crickets, the frogs, and you didn't hear all this traffic there. I wasn't in the city at all, so, it was pretty peaceful. It was pretty peaceful, and you get to, yeah, it was. So it was pretty peaceful. My co-host wanted to, he's like, really? So it was pretty peaceful, um, and it wasn't much noise at all. And then sometimes I would hear like music coming out of my closet or my pillow, or like if you're using a hair dryer, the music would be coming out of the hair dryer. So I'm like, great. So like naturally as a kid, you tell people this and they think, oh, you're a kid, you're lying, you're making it up, you have a wild imagination, you're just a crazy kid. They don't really pay much attention to you knowing that. So I would go around, saying, no, but, I hear voices. That sounds good, right? Imagine saying that today. I hear voices. Someone's always calling me. Sometimes they're pretending to be one of you, and I would tell everybody. Now, my father was really religious. He's from Italy. He was going to be a priest before he met my mother. He was studying for that. So you can't talk to him about any of this because he would just say, that's evil. You're the devil. Devil child was my nickname. He would just be like, you have to go to church, that's why, you have to pray, and, all that kind of stuff. And my mother was just like, whatever, because my father would go to church all the time. My mother never went with him. She was more like me. She had the abilities, which I didn't really know till later, but she would always tell me, don't tell your father these things, just come to me. So that's what I did. So I would always hear music coming out of nowhere. Like I said, I'd be drying my hair and music would be coming out of the hair dryer. And this stems from when I was little till about maybe 11, probably until like 10 or 11. And I would hear voices at night. Uh, they wouldn't call me as much in the night as I would hear chatter. I'd hear like just regular conversations. I'd hear laughing and conversations and, loud, boisterous. I'd hear music. I'd hear like a DJ. And sometimes I would think, oh, back in the day in the late 70s and 80s, yes, I'm old, they would have those little transistor radios and you only had one earbud that you plugged in. They didn't have the two. I guess they didn't care that you had two ears. Back in the day, they only cared that you had one ear. The earbuds literally just had one earbud. That's it. And you'd plug it into your little transistor. And we used to like to take our little transistor radios to bed with us and listen to music, but of course with the earbud because my father would scream and yell. And so I thought my sister fell asleep with her radio because by then she was 5 years older than me, so she was getting older, and the older she got, especially teenager, the more the music she'd play. So I would, if I was brave enough, I'd get out of bed and I'd peek in her room and she'd be like sleeping with her mouth open, just snoring away. So I knew that wasn't her. And my other sisters were way older, so they were out with their boyfriends. They weren't home till sometimes midnight, past midnight. And it was okay because it was all neighborhood people and my parents knew them and they would sit out in the backyard. We had a nice backyard with a built-in pool. So if it was summertime, if it was wintertime, they'd still be out with their boyfriends. They were older, They were like 16, 17, 18, 20s. And so he's going to sit this one out, I think. So we would have those issues with hearing. Well, I would hear the music, and I didn't know where it was coming from, and I would peek in my parents' room, and I knew they were sound asleep, and I didn't know where it was coming from. And if my other sisters were sleeping, they would share their rooms upstairs on the 5th floor, and nobody was up on that floor. So I didn't know where all the racket was coming from. Sometimes it sounded like it was coming out of my closet, but sometimes it was out of thin air. And I would hear just a lot of talking, and it wasn't bad. It sounded like they were having a good time. There was a lot of partying. I can hear a DJ. He sounded like Casey Kasem. He was coming out of my closet. As long as he didn't sound like Wolfman Jack, because that back in the day, if anybody remembers, Wolfman Jack was the DJ on 99X in New York, at least Long Island. I remember we used to all listen to 99X back in the day because it was a very popular radio station, played all the rock, which now it used to be classic rock, now it's oldies. So, but, yeah, that's kind of funny. But yeah, he did sound like Casey Kasem. And you would just hear like dishes clanking and utensils clanking and glasses clanking, people laughing and asking, give me more of this and give me more of that, and then they would be singing, and there was a lot of chitter chatter too, just a regular talking, and sometimes it was just music. So like I said, and it didn't matter. That was mostly at night, but in the day I would still hear the music. Now all the partying would go on at night. I mean, it's probably because everything was still and everybody was quiet that I can hear it. In the day, I could hear, like I said, sometimes people calling me with that sing-song or mimicking, or that non-gender voice that you didn't know whether it was male or female. It just sounded, I don't know what it was, but it was always calling me. Sometimes if I was playing in the backyard by the basement windows, like my swing set and everything, and I would hear my father calling me, and I'd go up to the basement window and say, what? And then all of a sudden my father would be like, who are you talking to? And I'm like, well, you were just down there. And he's like, no, I was right here cleaning the pool. And I'm like, you weren't just downstairs? Because I heard you. And he's like, no, And this got to be a regular thing with me because I was really pissed off. I wanted to know who is doing this to me. Is it a regular person? Is this a joke? What's going on? Did somebody use one of those recorders? And remember, in the recorder in the day were big. They weren't like these little recorders. So I just thought maybe there was some kind of joke. They recorded everybody's voices and playing it. But, you know, I didn't know. But after a while, I figured it out that this wasn't human or anybody from this dimension doing it. Um, and that was really the whole gist of all that. There was a lot of just noising, sounds, voices, music, you know, coming out of nowhere. So naturally, I would tell my friends, and they would be like, sure, 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 you're crazy. You know, well, you're a liar, you're making it up. And my sisters would make fun of me. They told my neighbors, and my neighbor, the one guy down the block, used to go by the hedges and call my name, and, you know, just to try to freak me out because they would tell the stories about how I can hear this one and that one. So, but I knew it was them. Plus, I could see them through the hedges. We had tall hedges around the house. And so, yeah, that was a big thing, hearing music out of nowhere. Like I said, I'd be drying my hair, whether it was the day or whatever, and it would, you can hear it coming out of the hairdryer. It's music, all kinds of music. I don't really, you know, not ethereal harp music, just music. Like I said, at night you can hear a DJ. I guess there was a lot of partying going on at night. They know how to have fun. So that will conclude the Paranormal Vlog 1 for today. And I hope to get a better train of thought without all these distractions and do Paranormal 2 vlog. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will do more. Please comment, tell me what you think, tell me if you like it. And I will have another one for you soon.